Hi, my name is Zoe Flowers, and I'm the author of From Ashes to Angel's Dust, A Journey Through Womanhood. And this is the book, From Ashes to Angel's Dust, A Journey Through Womanhood. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself and about how the book came to be. So I grew up in a town that was considered safe. This is my childhood home. And it could have even been called ideal. I mean, we didn't have to lock our doors if we didn't want to. There were times where we went away on vacation and came back and realized our back doors were unlocked. And so my town was a small suburban town. I like to call it a one-horse town, although there's a lot more going on now than when I was a younger person. And as a child, I definitely traveled a lot. The picture on the left is myself. Obviously, I'm the smaller one, with my grandfather there. I don't even know where we were, and my babysitter Pam. I'm not sure where we were. Maybe we were in DC. I can't remember. And then the picture on the right is the actual my first home that I lived in, and I lived there until I was around 5 years old, and then we moved. So my school, the school that I grew up in, just like the town, had pretty much the best of everything. This photo here is a picture from my I was going to my cousin's wedding, and this was a picture in my grandparents' kitchen. And this house will actually have some bearing on the story as we get a little further in. So, like I said, my town, my school, right? It had a ski club. It had you know, just so many things. My classmates vacationed overseas all the time. I was being taught computer programming at a time when, computers were really just popping. They were just coming about, and we were being taught how to program. And again, in theory, my school, my town had the best of everything. The only thing that was missing in my town were people of color. So this photo, and you see the little arrow there. There I am in the crease. I mean, it's bad enough that there's barely any people of color here, but also, they put the folks of color like in the crease. So anyway, this is actually my college yearbook, but I couldn't really even find a decent photo of myself in my high school yearbooks, and my college and my high school were pretty much the same vibe. Like exactly the same vibe. So that's why photo is here. So there were no black people in my neighborhood. I never had a black teacher. In fact, there were no black teachers in the entire school district. And when I think about it, I'm not even sure if there were any people of color as teachers or as faculty in my town. So needless to say, there were no black librarians. There were no black doctors. The only black business owners I knew were the ones that were in my family or friends of my family. So, what happens to a black child when they grow up in a situation like that? Lots of things can happen. And I can tell you what happened to me. So, I wound up living in a perpetual state of almost schizophrenia, really. I mean, I had lots of friends, but I was an outsider at the same time. I felt lucky because I knew that, I had two parents in the home. I had a nice home. I had a good education. Um, so I definitely felt a sense of, luck around that, but it really wasn't luck. It was my parents' hard work. But anyway, but at the same time, I felt guilty about it because I knew at a very young age about inequality and differences. I hated being different, and I liked standing out at the same time. And obviously, I stood out. I was the only black child from the first grade to the third in my school. And then another black girl came in the third grade, and we were fast friends. So, when I grew up, interracial dating was not done. And so I didn't really date at all when in those formative years because the black boys that were bussed in from the town over, they wanted nothing to do with, me, who they called an Oreo, in between chasing and dating all of the white girls that they could find. So Yeah, it was interesting. So when I got to high school, and one of the things I want to say is also is that I don't have a sense of really remembering overt racism towards me until I got into high school. I know that there were a few things that happened that my mother saw and that my mother addressed, but again, I didn't really receive any overt anything until I reached high school. So, you know, young people, I think we just like what we see, what's familiar all the time, and and like I said, there were no really black boys in my town that were interested in me. So what was around me? White, Jewish, Italian. And so there came a time where I found myself having a crush on a football player, a popular one. And this was when I was a freshman, and I made the mistake of telling a friend that I thought this football player was attractive, and word got out. I don't know how word got out, but word got out. And what ensued was 3 years of racial bullying. At the same time that I made my disclosure, we were reading a book called The Crucible by Arthur Miller. And in the book, The Crucible, there is a character called Tituba. Some say she is a Native American person. Some say she was of Bahamian descent. What we do know, however, is that she was a crucial part of the book, The Crucible, and she was in a subservient position. Some would say she was an enslaved African. So my classmates at that time decided that it would be an appropriate, Tituba would be an appropriate nickname for me. And they called me Tituba almost every single day of my high school experience. They called me Tituba wherever they saw me. If we were in the cafeteria and they would all sat together, because cliques, and so there could be 15, 20 boys, and I would walk into the cafeteria and they would say 1, 2, 3, and they would all stand up and yell Tituba. And so, of course, that was embarrassing, horrifying, actually. And so there were many days that I didn't eat lunch at all, or sometimes I ate outside just to avoid that embarrassment. They also hung out in certain parts of school, and so I had to redirect how I moved about the school, which sometimes meant I was late for class, so that I could avoid the bullying. The bullying was not only located on campus. There was a time when they came to my home, honked the horn. I came outside. They yelled Tituba. There were times when they saw me out shopping, just wherever they saw me. And it's interesting because as an adult, I don't feel as though they were actively trying to put me in my place, but there was a definite, this is who you are type attitude about it, right? And they knew that nobody would protect me, nobody would stick up for me, and nobody did. No teachers, no adults at all. And they did this in front of adults for years. When they graduated, the next crew would take over. But I survived. And, I wanted to also add what I think is interesting too around putting me in my place. I was a thicker girl, I was a chunkier black girl. And so there were lots of other, now that I think about it, there were other racial slurs that they would, throw at me, either calling me like Disco Earthquake or Nell Carter or just Luther Vandross, like any black person that was overweight, they would hurl those insults at me. Not uncommon. High school, children are tough. But the area of no protection and the lessons that I learned early stuck. But again, I survived and I got out of high school and I just starved myself into an acceptable weight. One could even say that I became a hot girl. And one of the things that I suspected was that life was better skinny. And I starved myself down to a size 4. And while there is a particular kind of invisibility that people who are deemed less attractive get, there is a very interesting visibility and power that you get when you're considered attractive. And I definitely let myself bask in that power that I had never experienced. So I started modeling. This is actually a picture from outside a fashion show that I had just done. Again, I relished it. This is another photo that I did, back in the day. And so I was enjoying myself for the first time, really. And it was against this backdrop that I met Manny. So Manny was smart, he was funny, he was charismatic, and he was a coworker. And he was somebody that, he was a first generation college student in his family. He was an impeccable dresser. And after tons of lunches and late night phone calls, he asked me out on a date. And I said yes. I mean, I had never had a date. And I was about 20. And so on our first date, he came to my house. That same house that I showed you in the beginning, he met my grandparents. He met my mom. Not sure where my father was. And he took me out to the movies. We never made it to the movies. He took me behind an old school in a part of town that, we were in a different town. My grandparents lived in a different town than the town I grew up in. My grandparents actually lived in the city. I lived in the suburbs. So he took me to a part of the city that I never had been to. So I didn't know where I was. He took me behind a school and he sexually assaulted me. And I put up a fight, a vicious fight. And so the assault wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it was bad enough, that's for sure. And after the assault, he brought me back home. He brought me back to my neighborhood. And as I was getting out of the car, he said 3 things. First thing he said to me was, "I'm in a gang." Shocking. And if you tell anyone, I'll kill you. Next thing he said was, "I'll pick you up the same time tomorrow. And if you're not outside, I'll kill you." And then he said, "If you tell our boss," we'll call our boss Jake, "if you tell Jake, I'll kill you." So he left. I went in the house. I told no one. I didn't know how to deal with the sexual assaults. All I knew was what I'd seen in the movies. So I took a shower and I fell on my bed. And actually, my bedroom is the one right here behind this tree right here. This was my old bedroom for a long time, up there on the second floor. That was my bedroom. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And I thought, wow, I'm really dumb. What did I do? I should have known better. Not unlike a lot of survivors. I didn't tell the police. I didn't tell my parents. I mean, he said he was going to kill me. He said he was in a gang, and I believed it. But what I did do is I did tell Jake, my boss. And I never saw Manny again. Word on the street is that some of my male coworkers went and found him and, did something to him, allegedly. All I know is he never came back. He didn't even come back to pick up his check. So there was some measure of relief there. There was some measure of justice, but not really, because several years later, I ran into Manny and in a store, and he didn't even recognize me. And that's when I thought, wow, how many other girls has he done this to where there was no recognition in his face at all? And the sad part about it is I wish I could say that this incident with Manny was the first and last assault that I experienced in my life, but it wasn't. It wasn't. But I survived. I started my healing process. And one of the things I found was that telling my truth gave other people the courage to do the same. And so this is where From Ashes to Angels Dust comes in. Many years later, I decided to start writing a book. And it began as a novel about four girlfriends and their relationship trials and tribulations. And one of those characters just happened to be in an abusive relationship because, as I said, I wish that my experience with Manny was my first and last assault. After that incident with Manny, I went on to be in a very abusive dating relationship. Again, I told no one. So, but of course, I didn't think it was an abusive relationship. I thought I was just dating someone that was angry. So I started writing this book, and before long, this one character who was in this abusive relationship, she started dominating my story. I didn't think a lot about it. I just figured, you know what, I'm going to just follow wherever the story takes me, that's where I'm going to go. And there came a point where all of my thoughts, all of my visions, everything just stopped. And my spirit said, you know what, you need to just tell the truth about what happened to you. And so that's what I decided to do. I decided to start looking for women like me, and I did not have to look far because once I started telling my girlfriends about my experience, they started telling me their experiences. And it was like every girl I knew had been violated in some way. And we had known each other, some of us, our whole lives. Some of us had known each other 5 years, and we never spoke about the truth. We never talked about the abuse. So I started wondering why that was. I started researching domestic violence. I started researching domestic violence against Black women in particular. And at that time, there was only one book, and it was written in 1972 by Evelyn C. White, and the name of the book was Change. And that was it. That's all there was. So like I said, I decided to start writing the book myself. So I started looking for women to interview, and I met them everywhere. And it was very rewarding. It was very enlightening hearing all of their different stories, chronicling all their different stories. But I felt like it was also important to add into the book why domestic violence happens. What is society's role in that? What is religion's role in that? What is history's role in that? And so I put all of that in my book. And so, as a resource guide, From Ashes to Angels Dust provides readers with an intensely personal look at domestic violence from the survivor's perspective, from women like me. I also felt like it was important to include hotlines, the National Domestic Violence Hotline phone number in there, other resources, domestic violence resources, and strategies for safety planning. As a self-help book, From Ashes to Angels just provides readers with healing tools and techniques because I am a healing professional now. So I put some of those tools and techniques in the book as well. And as a teaching tool, as I said, I wanted to know why this happens, why society lets these things happen, why society supports gender-based violence. And so I put that in the book as well as prevention strategies that are being used across the country, because I did go on to work in the domestic violence movement for 20 years. So you can get your copy. I made sure I put the link here so that you can get a copy and share it with your community. I have had the pleasure and the honor of taking my story all around this country, many colleges. I've been to universities. I've had the chance to speak at domestic violence programs. I had a chance to go to Morocco to talk about using the arts to heal domestic and sexual violence. And so, yeah, I've been all around the world and and I'd love to come to your community and talk with you about not just the book, but what's going on in your community, what's going on with the girls and the young men and the gender nonconforming people in your community. I'd love to work with you any way that makes sense. So I did an interview a few years ago, and the interviewer asked me what I thought the future held. And I told her I thought that I told her that I felt like the future was bright. I told her that despite everything, I see a future where Tituba wins. So that's a little bit about me. I am super easy to find. All of my contact information is right there. You can visit my website, iamzoeflowers.com. You can email me directly, info@iamzoeflowers.com. If you want to schedule a call to see if I'm a good fit for your community, you can schedule a booking call with me using my Calendly link. You can also find me on Clubhouse at I Am Zoe Flowers. And if you go to my link tree, that'll give you just a range of my services and my products and all of those good things. So I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Reach out to me, let me know if it resonates, and I'll see you next time. Bye.